Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton. My name is Pauline Nyjander, and I'm one of the seminarians here at the congregation. We extend a special welcome to all of our visitors this morning. We're really glad that you're here, and we invite you to stop by our welcome table after the service in Robinson Lounge. So that's the two doors in the back that you probably came through. There's a table over there. One of our awesome people will be glad to answer any questions you might have about who we are and help us let us know who you are. Again, welcome, and we're very glad that you've joined us here today. Well, now that we're into the quote-unquote church year in September, we have quite a number of things, and we are quite busy. So if you don't hear an announcement here, make sure you're checking your happenings and signing up for our email, which has all the lovely offerings going on. But like I said, we have a few announcements this morning. The Chalice Circle Newcomer Orientation Program, and that's today after the worship service. It's going to be held in the Founders Room instead of the John Murray Room. If you signed up for the Fire Pit event at the February Fellowship Auction, please contact Sue Tillett or Pat Radke directly. They are both here, so Pat's toward the front over here and Sue's toward the back. So if you signed up for that event, make sure you speak with them or reach out to them because they've got some important information about the evening. Also going on today, please support the Climate Superfund Act after the service. UU Faith Action New Jersey will be in Robinson Lounge collecting signatures of support for the Climate Superfund Act, which is designed to make fossil fuel companies pay for the cost of their climate pollution. Money collected would go towards climate change adaptation projects, and this act is one of the priorities of the UU Faith Action New Jersey, and we need your signature, so please stop by the table for more information, or please see Suzanne Apel. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name. Is Apel or Apple? My apologies. The Earth Ministry will lead a UU crew to participate in next Saturday's Hopewell Township Fall Clean Sweep. So that's October the 4th. I know, October already. If you would like to participate, even for just an hour or two, please email earthministry@uuprinceton.org. Again, that's earthministry@uuprinceton.org so they can coordinate the meetup location. And then the last announcement we have for today, save the date for Friday, October 10th from 7 to 9 p.m. in Foz, where there will be a showing by the Racial Justice Task Force of the movie Sugarcane. This Academy Award nominated R-rated documentary covers, so mind you, so R-rated means you probably don't want to bring the little ones to this one. You might want to find someone to babysit. This documentary covers an investigation into the Canadian Indian residential school system, igniting a reckoning in the lives of survivors and their descendants. And that ends our announcements. And as we begin our time of worship, we are reminded that we gather here together on this Sunday in the spirit of the principles that we believe in. We gather here together in the spirit of acceptance and in the worth and dignity of those around us as well as ourselves. We gather here together in the spirit of community and to celebrate the diversity that makes us who we are, human. It is through our shared humanity that we work together to build a community that celebrates the gifts and the diversity that each of us brings here. And as a woman, a lesbian, and a trans woman, I am grateful to be welcomed here as I am. And whether you be a guest or a longtime member, I hope that whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. And now, let us worship together.
Our chalice words this morning are from Nichelle Nichols from her autobiography, Beyond Uhura. Some people view Gene as a man with a wild, futuristic, utopian fantasy, but that's too simple. Star Trek did not promise that people would magically become inherently better, but that they would progress, always reaching for their highest potential and noblest goals, even if it took centuries of taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And if you now join me in our unison affirmation from Gene Roddenberry, printed in your order of service. Diversity contains as many treasures as those waiting for us on other worlds. We will find it impossible to fear diversity and to enter the future at the same time.
Blessed Earth Mother, we thank you for the gift of beauty and diversity in the natural world. We thank you for a gift that showers us with sights, sounds, tastes, and smells that tickle our senses day in and day out and make life worth living. It is those gifts that you give us that cause us to stop in our tracks and look on in wonder and amazement with our breath catching, inspiring us to create new and incredible things or bringing up pleasant memories back to the surface. Help us to learn to see those gifts, to appreciate those wondrous gifts you bring us. For those of us that struggle with this, help us open our minds that this diversity is good. And help us to realize that we too, everyone here, is also a part of that beautiful gift of a diverse and natural world. Blessed be, and amen.
Good morning. More than most other pieces of popular culture, Star Trek has always shaped my world and yet not been quite part of it. Even before my conscious memories, I was apparently nursed to sleep to reruns of the 1960s original series. The Next Generation was just almost too early for my own generation. It started when I was only 2 years old. When I rewatched The Adventures of Captain Picard and his crew in 2020, it was remarkable for how much I didn't know, how much aged badly, but how much actually held up. But things shape you, things land with you, even where and when you might not think they would. The first Star Trek I can really clearly remember, I think, was Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, the 6th movie. Final hurrah for Kirk and his crew, one of the even-numbered ones, which are allegedly the good ones. But as my mother will always tell me, even the worst Star Trek will tell you something, often about the time it came from, often very, very loudly. Trek at its best and its worst can be knock you over the head obvious about the message the writers were trying to convey. Much later, around the turn of the millennium, our family was finally able to buy a whole DVD set of the original series. I saw for the first time all the ways that Gene Roddenberry, Gene Kuhn, Bob Justman, Dorothy, D.C. Fontana, to name just a few of the show's writers and artists, I saw for the first time how they wrangled in such clumsy ways with the tough issues of their time. As Star Trek fans, we still, unabashedly, will quote an episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, that's all about racism, conveyed through Frank Gorshin having one half of his face painted literally mime white and one side of his face painted black against an enemy who has the same painting but reversed. That was all the way back in 1969. By 1991, I was a tiny 6-year-old, able to be lugged along and sit quietly watching The Undiscovered Country. Things had progressed. They gotten more complicated, right? Sure. My 2 parents, born during the height of the Cold War in 1956, could now bring their daughter and probably, I think, their unborn son to watch Star Trek work through the decline of one of the great superpowers of their time. So basically, that meant the Klingons as the USSR with some cameos by Shakespeare, CGI, and floating purple blood. Subtle, right? Sometimes the show would send its messages with subtlety. The Picard years, running from 1987 to 1994, get an interesting reputation in comparison. They're allegedly calmer than the years of Captain Kirk, who sadly gets simplified now often into romancing alien ladies. But the next generation was certainly not calmer in emotion. There are episodes approaching questions of gender identity, of human rights, of occupation and depression and mortality. They look at race as well, though this time Nichelle Nichols and George Takei didn't have to take the whole brunt of representation. They didn't always do it well, to be sure. Rewatching the 1990s Star Trek as a female fan in particular is to be disappointed at least 35% of the time. Even when Captain Janeway showed up later to lead the USS Voyager into the Delta Quadrant, when you're 35 rather than 15, you recognize a lot of unquestioned chauvinism, a lot of unconscious prejudice threaded through the aspirational utopia. Like the humans who dominate Starfleet and write the shows, Trek will always fall short. We fall short, but we try again. As Nichelle put it, 2 steps forward even when we know the 1 step backward is coming. I love the big swings that Star Trek takes. They taught and they do teach me a lot. But the progress of Trek is in the small moments too, just as often. One that hits home particularly for me is from a less remembered late episode of The Next Generation. It's centered around a much mocked character, Roxana Troy, who, in the short version, is basically telepathic Auntie Mame in space. She's gotten her shine back recently, given that she was played by Majel Barrett. Like Nichelle Nichols and Dorothy Fontana and Lucille Ball, she was one of the godmothers of Star Trek. The episode in question is called Dark Page. It starts, as it always does, making Roxana the butt of the joke. She's still working through her tough relationship with her daughter, Deanna, the ship's therapist, and her tough relationship with Picard, the ship's captain, who could honestly really use a therapist. Roxana is, however, always acknowledged as a spectacular diplomat. She finesses what needs to be finessed and says the quiet part out loud whenever necessary. But diplomacy is not always about the issues at hand. It's about the trauma we have not yet been able to face as individuals and as groups. The hurts and scars and secrets burying us back ceaselessly into the past. As the sci-fi mechanisms of the episode work out, mostly including the ever-chaotic holodecks, we find out that Roxana bears so much darkness along with her vivacity, darkness that has never been explored. She lost a child. She lost a child and relives it in various versions of that moment every single day. And no one ever knew. Even Deanna, her prize girl, this character we have traveled with for 7 seasons, Deanna never knew. I don't remember exactly if my memories of Dark Page are from watching the episode first run. I suspect they are. I suspect they're edited like memories always are. However, I do remember a moment watching the episode when my mother confided in me that my grandmother went through a very similar thing. Weeks before Mom was born, Grandma lost her first child, Dickie, from a congenital heart defect. Like art can do, that episode gave me more understanding of my grandmother and a little more understanding of my mother as well. Not what it was like for them 60 years ago, but how it shaped and shapes her life now, even a little bit. Like Nichelle says, we do not become better without effort. Roxana and Deanna's tough relationship is not magically fixed by the revelations of Dark Page, but it does progress. I could work onwards and onwards with how Deep Space Nine or Voyager or Enterprise continue to tell me new things every time I rewatch, or explore how the recent series like Lower Decks and Discovery and Strange New Worlds continue to go places no one has gone before, taking the big swings that Trek has spent nearly 60 years doing. But for now, I'll end with one of my favorite scenes of Star Trek to watch when I'm sad or worried, or I honestly need a good cry. It's the end of the movie First Contact, where the Next Generation crew gets to make sure that their future happens. They make sure that the founding contact between the humans of Earth and a group of adventurous Vulcans on a survey ship goes on as planned. April 5th, 2063, for your calendars. The ending is not the biggest swing or the most dramatic scene that Star Trek ever did. It's a group of post-apocalyptic people in Bozeman, Montana. It's a diverse group, a tired group, a group who has implicitly been through as much trauma as the universe could devise. And yet, the dominant expression on their face is curiosity. They want to meet those Vulcans. And so do I. Somewhere in the back of my brain is that nursing infant, that 6-year-old, that teenager who watches Star Trek and thinks, wow, that's a world I'd like to live in. Live long and prosper.
This morning's reading is a poem titled, I Am Diversity, Please Include Me, by Charles Benefield. I'm presenting in every place you go, depending on your lens, I'm friend or foe. I'm a force to be reckoned with, like the winds of change I move, I'm swift. I'm present when two or more are together. If embraced, I can make the good even better. I'm not limited to age, gender, or race. I'm invisible at times, and yet all over the place. Don't exclude me due to a lack of knowledge. Welcome me like the fresh recruit out of college. Let me take my seat at the table, even though I may be differently able. My experience, my passion, the authentic me can help add value for your company. Learn about me, improve my underrepresentation, and I can provide a competitive edge to your entire nation. I exclude no one, I am strengthened by all. My name is diversity, and yes, I stand tall. Recognize me and keep me in the mix. Together, there's no problem that we cannot fix. I am your best hope toward true innovation, and to many I reflect hope and inspiration. Your lives and companies will continue to change, thus the need for diversity and inclusion will also remain. Do all you can to truly embrace me and experience life's fullness totally. I'm the thought lurking behind the unfamiliar face. I'm the ingenuity that helps your team win that race. I'm the solution that came from the odd question that was asked. I stand out in the crowd when I, diversity, am allowed to be unmasked. I'm diversity, embrace me and we'll journey far. I'm diversity, include me and we will reach the shining star. Coupled with inclusion, our lights burn longer. Together, we are smarter, better, and stronger. I am diversity. Yes, that's me. And again, that was by Charles Benefield. One of my favorite shows to watch on television as a child in the 80s came on as a holiday special on one of the few channels that we caught with rabbit ears in New York City. That show, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I don't quite know why I enjoyed it. Maybe it was the cute stop-motion animals, and maybe it was that feeling that I, too, was different in some way and just could not put my finger on it at the time. Whatever the reason, despite my being way too young to look at the messaging it presented on diversity through a different lens, it was the holiday special that I had looked forward to the most of all of the other holiday specials that aired during that time. Now, at risk of drawing the ire of two different groups of people, the first being the group that says it's way too early to start talking about Christmas-related things, and the second wondering where the Star Trek is. I'm just going to ask you to bear with me just a few moments, and hopefully this will all make sense in the grander scheme of things. Released 2 years before the original Star Trek series, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came out on television starring, you guessed it, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The movie followed the stories of Rudolph, a reindeer that was different from the standard reindeer herd that lived up at the North Pole, and an elf named Hermie that wished to become a dentist instead of building toys. Two characters that were seen as different from the established norms of where they lived, and they were ostracized for it. Even Rudolph's father was ashamed of his child being different, and Hermie, well, he gets mocked for having a different dream of being a dentist, something that elves were just not supposed to be, so he decides to quit his job. Now, outcasts, the two run away from Christmas Town, their home, where they meet up with a lonely prospector named Yukon Cornelius, and the trio would become attacked by the abominable snowman. Escaping certain death via a floating piece of ice, the trio land in one of the most diverse places that one could ever imagine, the island of misfit toys. It is a place where all of the rejected toys were sent due to a physical imperfection and where they had made their home. They offer aid to Rudolph and his companions to the best of their abilities, but Rudolph runs away from his friends as he is afraid his shiny nose, the thing that made him different, would draw the attention of the abominable snowman and harm his friends. He goes on to spend that time isolated and alone. A number of months go by, and Rudolph, now a fully grown reindeer, decides to return home, only to find that his parents had gone missing after having gone to search for him. A rather unique fight ensues between Rudolph and the abominable snowman, and to the rescue come Rudolph's friends, Hermie and Yukon Cornelius. The abominable snowman's teeth are removed by Hermie. Yes, this is a children's show, by the way. And when the fight resumes, Yukon and the abominable snowman fall over the edge of a cliff together. The group is welcomed back by Santa, who regretted his own mistreatment of Rudolph, and a big snowstorm that threatens to cancel Christmas is saved by Rudolph, whose diversity and difference are monetized to save the day and light Santa's way. In September 1966, not a full 2 years later, we had a different attempted portrayal of diversity in a television show that has now captured the imaginations of generations of fans, Star Trek. Released 59 years ago on television, it is a show that portrayed diversity in a new light, a type of diversity that would eventually receive a name by the show's founder, Gene Roddenberry, rooted in one of the alien race's philosophies: infinite diversity and infinite combinations, or IDIC. On the bridge of the USS Enterprise, you had a diverse cast of characters that included Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, who hailed from Kenya and the African Confederation, Hikaru Sulu from San Francisco and of Japanese descent, and eventually Pavel Chekhov from Russia. Remember, this was the 1960s. World War II was only 20 years ago. The Cold War was still pretty hot, and the Cuban Missile Crisis was just a few years earlier, and the Civil Rights Movement was in full swing. Humanity had moved past the strife of the 20th century and was exploring the galaxy on one of the most advanced starships ever created. The ideals represented in the show were so profound that in 1967, when Nichelle Nichols, who portrayed Lieutenant Uhura, was thinking of stepping away from Star Trek, well, a chance encounter with her greatest fan, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., at an NAACP fundraiser event changed her mind to remain with the show. Nichols shares in an interview she gave with Neil deGrasse Tyson that Dr. King spoke about the power of Star Trek and how important it is to the future because the Black community had been included in a vision of the future for the first time on television. But this woke vision of the future, and yes, Star Trek was woke from the get-go, don't let anyone tell you otherwise because it means they're not paying attention. This woke version of the future, couched in the ideology of infinite diversity and infinite combinations, wasn't perfect, as it was still a product of its time, written by people who were products of their time. Uhura, Sulu, and Chekhov, while on the bridge of the flagship of the Federation, were not the ones in command every episode. Gay, trans, non-binary, and many other diverse people were still nowhere to be seen. But unlike Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the trauma of othering it foisted upon Rudolph and his friends, Star Trek and its idea of IDIC left us with a gift that had people be themselves and that they had a place in the future. Was it perfect? No, but it opened the door. And boy, did successive generations of writers and showrunners begin to step through that door by building off of the idea of IDIC and the world that Gene Roddenberry had created, by continuing to push the envelope about society's topics and who was welcome in this vision of the future. In the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, we saw LeVar Burton of Roots and Reading Rainbow fame become the chief engineer of the new Enterprise, and Michael Dorn as Worf become chief of security of the same ship. It even saw Brent Spiner playing an android that, despite all of the opportunities out there to become whoever he wanted to be, his goal was to become more human. That must mean that there is something there worth emulating. Avery Brooks as Commander and eventually Captain Benjamin Sisko, a black man and a widower, raising a son beyond the edges of Federation space, in charge of one of the most important stations in the quadrant. Kate Mulgrew as Captain Catherine Janeway, in command of a science vessel tossed some 70,000 light years from home and forced to make some of the toughest decisions out there in an effort to keep to the principles that she held dear. Decisions that are still talked about and dissected by people to this very day, and I suspect that these are decisions that, had they come from a man, they probably would not have been as controversial. The showrunners made a lot of mistakes, and they still were products of their time, and as Emma shared a comment her mother would say, even the worst Star Trek will tell you something about the time it comes from. Those versions of Star Trek showed that they were still not ready for everyone to be included into this vision of the future. But the door was already opened, and Star Trek and IDIC continue to challenge and welcome more and more individuals into this vision of the future, a vision of the future that is needed more and more given the situation we're finding ourselves in now. Debuting in 2017, Star Trek Discovery saw Captain Michael Burnham, a black woman raised by an alien race, eventually becoming captain of the USS Discovery. The infamous year of 2020 saw Dawn Lewis voicing Captain Carol Freeman, a black woman, as captain of the USS Cerritos in the animated show Lower Decks. Discovery finally allowed the queer community a seat at the table of the future, with the addition of a gay couple portrayed by Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz, and their semi-adopted child Adira, who was non-binary. This was done much to the anger and disgust of some who really began to complain that Star Trek had become too woke, as if such a thing were possible. What was also curious, non-humanoid beings with intelligence finally saw their place in the vision of the future with the inclusion of whales. With an idealized vision of the future where more and more are welcome to the table, some have a difficult time with this, even in our own UU communities. A friend and colleague recently shared how they knew someone who had worked to welcome more diversity in the UU congregation that they had belonged to. But in the process, this individual felt as if somewhere along the way, the diversity that became present in the congregation brought changes to the service, and it left the individual missing the specific things that had brought them there to begin with. This person still believes in and does the work that the congregation does to further diversity and inclusion in the world and within the walls of their congregation, but the things that they had found comfort in during the worship service decades ago and kept coming back had changed. But that's the rub. If we are to welcome everyone and truly mean that everyone is welcome within our walls, we have to be prepared that that may mean that the things we held dear may need to change. Notice I said change, not necessarily go away completely. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the fear-mongering that our way of life as we know it is going away because we welcome too many people who are different from the image of straight, cisgender, white, male, Christian, and conservative that has dominated politics in the recent years and more so since the beginning of 2025. Instead of focusing on the problems that are plaguing our country and our world of the present, our political leaders have chosen to go down the road of blaming it on the infinite diversity that exists in the world, whether we like it or not. It is all the elves telling Hermie that being a dentist is ridiculous and that Rudolph is a freak with a shiny red nose, and their society does everything to make them want to disappear. But in our world, it's even worse, as our leaders are stating that it is the diversity that is causing these problems in our society, because it is easier to blame and demonize someone who lacks the same power to fight back against systems of oppression than to actually fix the problems that exist and still manage to line the pockets of the 1% at the same time. Because it is easier to break off into our separate and disparate groups than to accept that the future that Star Trek has shown us is knocking on our door right now, and that future is beautiful and it is diverse. It is a future where if we truly mean to build the idyllic world portrayed in Star Trek, it may mean that some of the things we have held onto, the things that were products of their time, that those things may need to change. And yes, I'm sure there are some things that may need to go away. And if we truly purport ourselves to believe in a future where everyone is welcome, we as a society may need to learn to be okay with that. Because just as the world of Star Trek has grown over the past 59 years, we too need to continue to grow, and so does society around us. Star Trek has shown us one possible future of what community looks like. It certainly is not perfect, but if one thing is clear, it is certainly built on the idea that diversity is key and not homogeneity. While it is very much a product of its time, it is also the type of world that has shaped me, and its ideals portrayed the type of world that I would love to see. And I hope that one day we can get there together. Live long and prosper, peace and long life. Amen, and blessed be. As we extinguish our chalice, we join countless Unitarian Universalists around the world with the knowledge that while our chalice's flame may be extinguished, the fire of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, generosity, and love continue to burn brightly within each of us. May that flame of good never go out. And for our benediction, may love and compassion guide you in all that you do. May wisdom help you to seek responsible truths and meanings. May inspiration lead you to new places, and may the hope you bring be a beacon for others. May you share your beautiful gifts with the world. Blessed be, and amen.